all long-standing news outlets, including CNN, rejected the very restrictive policy and turned in their press passes.
Pete Hegseth's new Pentagon press mandate and the new press corps are harmful to the integrity of American journalism. Yeah, you guys want to say why you like it a lot?
Sure. Well, I'll say first of all, I think it's important to understand what this new mandate was. So there was three main categorical changes in the mandate. First of all, that the press can't just roam freely around the Pentagon anymore, that they need to have an escort, which makes sense. Why wasn't that a thing before?
That's absolute nonsense. The press has never been able to just roam freely wherever they want in the Pentagon. And if you think that's the case, I'm sorry, you're a moron.
Second of all, that the press need to wear identifiable badges so you can identify that they're press and not actual workers of the Pentagon. Again, why wasn't that a thing before?
The idea that people are roaming around the Pentagon without badges is kind of stupid, especially considering Trump was already the president. If you support Donald Trump, and this makes sense to you, but you're not wondering why Donald Trump for 4 years had the press that he says were fake news and the enemy of the people, he had them roaming around the Pentagon for 4 years without even badges, just freely roaming around wherever. You really think that's what Donald Trump did for 4 years? If so, you're a moron.
Third of all, that the press can no longer solicit illegal information being leaked to them, aka classified documents. Again, why was that not a thing anymore? So I think that this change, it's pretty common sense that you want to protect classified information and that you want to make sure that we don't have press.
Didn't someone end up leaving the country and being in hiding for a very long time because they revealed classified information?
Childlessly wandering around the Pentagon.
So a lot of it's security concerns, right?
Yeah, mainly.
So would you say that part of ensuring that we have proper security means we stop things like independent oversight on Pentagon spending or things like whistleblowers for troops conditions that are experienced in the field?
Well, there's no changes here to whistleblowers. I mean, you can still have people that send in information to the press. Just the press can't go out and solicit this information from Pentagon employees.
Was the press soliciting information?
I mean, likely, yeah.
But is there evidence of that?
I mean, does it really matter if there's evidence?
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's kind of like creating...
Can you agree that they shouldn't be?
The idea that our press has not been soliciting information from the Pentagon is absolutely moronic. Has this Democrat never heard of a scoop that our media had on the Pentagon? They never turned on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or Fox and heard a story where they reported on information they got from anonymous sources? You've never heard of that?
That information.
I think the press is free to do whatever they want. They're the free press. They're not the controlled press.
Well, the free press is a very good statement to make. However, you have to understand that the nature of what the Pentagon is. That's for the Department of Defense. That's military. That deals with classified information on a daily basis. So it would be an absolutely ridiculous thing to have press freely roaming around the Pentagon. Now, I'm not going to make the claim that there's evidence that there have been missteps or that there was leaked information. What I'm saying is
we've never had press freely roaming around the Pentagon. It's not a thing, never been a thing. You're a moron if you think it is.
Core of what the mandate is to ensure a baseline level of security within the American military and the way in which information...
The fact that these folks on the left are allowing them to keep saying this nonsense without pushing back immediately is also insane. How many times have these guys started with this false premise that people are just roaming around the Pentagon? And I'm going to clarify what exactly happens in the Pentagon in a second, but it's nonsense.
I'm just trying to go back to this original point because I guess what I don't understand is, was the press roaming freely hurting our intelligence in any way? Like, I don't think there's any evidence of that.
I'm sorry.
Is there any evidence of that?
I mean, I think that's just a pretty clear security breach. I mean,
but there's no...
To have people roaming around the Pentagon, the most secure building in the world.
Can we at least agree?
If it's secure, then why is it a problem if press is roaming freely to be able to talk to people?
So we're going to act as if, hold on, no.
That's kind of a stupid point coming from this Democrat. This is like having a prison where the prisoners are left unattended every night for 10 hours. And then he says, Well, has it been a problem? Have issues occurred because they're unattended for 10 hours at night? Then if not, then why do we care? So if you're doing something that obviously is a bad idea and has huge problems with it, it's okay up until there's evidence that it's not okay. Is that the logic? So if I am smoking on a daily basis and I don't have any health issues that I'm aware of, then smoking on a daily basis is okay. Right? If I habitually cross the road with my eyes closed and I don't get hit by a car, then there's no evidence that this is a problem, right? Have I ever been hit by a car? No, then it's fine, right? That's the logic that this Democrat is using. It's nonsensical, right? And understand why he's making this nonsensical argument. The folks on the right are saying something that's not true. They're talking about how people are just roaming around the Pentagon. This Democrat doesn't know that that is not true. But he has this sort of tribal spirit where these are the bad guys, these are my opponents, so whatever they're saying, I have to challenge it, even if I don't have a good point. I don't know whether they have badges or not. I don't know whether they're really roaming around or not. I'm not really sure, but I feel like I'm obligated to challenge them, right, on everything. So I'm just going to say something stupid because that's the best thing I can come up with. Like, oh, is there any evidence that there's a problem? Like, that's all he's got, right? So he's just arguing just to argue.
Not been instances, not necessarily the Pentagon per se. Have there been
we're talking about the
instances-
Pentagon.
Well, right. What I'm saying is, let's start from general working with the Pentagon. Have there been instances in American history where information has been leaked before it was supposed to? Can we agree that that has occurred in the history of this
and would you
country?
say that
So if we can agree to that,
Good point. Obviously, this has happened. That this has to even be a point to be brought up is just ridiculous in showing how partisan these folks in this moment on the left are being. Now, truth be told, the folks on the right absolutely demolished in this debate overall, not this specific part of the debate. This is a much longer video. You can go watch the full video. The right wing, as usual on shows like this, demolished, right? Moving the goalposts, playing all kind of games and deflecting and all this kind of stuff. So the left is winning on this debate. But in this moment, on this topic, that's not the case.
my only question is this: what is wrong at face value with setting that baseline security risk or that security measure? Excuse me. What's wrong with that at baseline?
Well, the problem is you have not substantiated that that is a risk. Like they're just creating this rule for no reason to control the press rather than giving.
Let's just admit that it is a risk to state goals.
That's all I was asking. Thank you.
Let's just admit that there's a risk, even just for.
I want to make something very clear. There are situations where the argument that the Democrat is making would be logical. Let's say that there's a system in place that's working and there's been no issues. We have no evidence that there's any issues. And then someone comes up with a ridiculous idea, right, of an unnecessary measure that is just not really based on any logic. So if you have no evidence that a thing is a problem, it's been working, it's kind of illogical to come up with a solution to a problem that doesn't exist when the solution doesn't really make any sense, right? However, if you have something that on its face is problematic, right? Like prisoners not being attended for 10 hours a night. That's a huge problem, right? We don't need to wait until something happens to realize that, right? But that's not the case here, right? Obviously, there's been leaks. Obviously, there's massive issues if you have people roaming around the Pentagon, which is why it's not allowed and it's never been allowed. Right? So just want to make that clear. There are times where this Democrat's logic actually makes sense. This is not one of them. Right? You can't use that logic when the thing is problematic on its face, and it's obviously problematic. It's the Pentagon. You can't have people just roaming around and wait until something happens to say something. That's crazy. Like you have a bunch of troops on the battlefield without any body armor, and you wait until someone gets shot to be like, hey, maybe we should get body armor? No, we can see that that's a bad idea. So someone coming up with a solution for it before someone gets shot is not illogical. That's prudent, right?
Leaking information that is showing clear abuses and injustices of our military is something that's a bad thing.
Absolutely. If leaking information leaking information is not a bad thing. Let me restate that. Leaking information where abuse is occurring is not a bad thing. There should absolutely be whistleblower protections. I'm not going to ever argue
And
that. However,
you're making it more difficult for that to come to light if you are putting unnecessary mandates on what's happening to these press.
Obviously, you want to prevent the amount of leaks. If you're a Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon, you want to be able to have your classified information stay classified. And if there's actual abuses, then there's still protections in place for them to actually go out and leak the information to the press.
But again, that has not happened. It hasn't happened.
But also,
they're creating. But I think this is important because they're creating.
Just so we're clear, if we think with a brain of an adult and not of a child, then we'll recognize that what's been done here doesn't address the issue that the folks on the right are bringing up. Do we really think that the press doesn't have contact information for people in the Pentagon? I mean, yes, being able to roam freely around unclassified areas does make it easier to not only engage with people that you already have relationships with, but also to forge new relationships. Maybe you bump into someone, or you can set up a meeting with someone and develop some kind of rapport. But if you're not in these unclassified areas like they have been in the past, if you don't have access to that anymore, it makes it difficult to get these new connections. However, I can guarantee you, the same press who are not allowed, who gave up their badges, they've got phone numbers, they've got signal chat IDs or whatever of multiple people in the Pentagon. So the leaks can continue, right? The leaks absolutely continue. You don't need to be in the Pentagon to get the leaks, right? So whatever Trump is doing or Pete Hegseth is doing is not stopping the press from being able to get leaks, right? It is making it more difficult, and over time, it'll be increasingly difficult because as the people that the press have access to, as they retire, their phone books, shall we say, will get smaller and smaller and smaller. The amount of contacts they have in the Pentagon will get lesser and lesser. And over a very, very long time, we're talking about decades, at some point, if it keeps up the way it is now, the Pentagon might not have any access to anyone in the Pentagon, right? So, in theory, it may be 30 to 40 years, 50 years or more, this move will definitely help to avoid some of those leaks. But in the meantime, it's not going to really do much. And I want to make that clear. When I say not going to do much, I mean in terms of leaks. It is going to do much in terms of the media's ability to keep us informed about what's happening with the Pentagon outside of the propaganda that the administration is putting out. That will certainly be more challenging. But again, even that, how much more challenging it is going to be? Because again, they've got the contacts of these people. As long as they have those contacts, they're going to be able to report on anonymous sources in the Pentagon who are saying that Pete Hegseth is this and that and that, and they don't actually know who they're killing with the boats or whatever it is. We're still going to get that information, right? So what they're doing is not preventing the leaks. All it's doing is is making it more difficult to keep the American people informed about what their money is being spent on at the Pentagon. So we, the people, are becoming less informed. Right? That's the biggest benefit of this. Leaks will continue, but the Americans will be less informed. That's the result.
There's been no leak of classified information because of roaming reporters. What they're trying to do is create a tier of...
I'm pretty sure there's been multiple leaks because of roaming reporters. All right, I'm going to end on this. Let me tell you what's been happening. People in the press have absolutely had badges. People in the press have absolutely been controlled in terms of where they had access to. They needed to have escorts to go to classified areas and the restricted parts of the building. The roaming around was in the unclassified area. And even in that unclassified area, you needed to have badges, right? I used to work a long time ago for a magazine company, and there were certain restricted parts of the area, like they did product reviews, and they would use double badge access. So basically, you need a badge to get in and get out. So if you snuck in behind someone, you could end up being trapped. You're in there waiting for someone to leave, which makes it easier for you to stand out and people to realize you're not supposed to be in there. That's just a magazine company. What kind of procedures do you think the Pentagon is using? And although these right-wingers on this show might be not the brightest bulbs, I don't think they're that stupid that they really think that people are just roaming all around the Pentagon, even under their guy for 4 years. They must know that they literally said it's the most secure building. How can you say that it's the most secure building and at the same time suggest that it's less secure than a magazine, right? So they've had badges and they've required escorts. The game that's being played, and this is a typical thing the Trump administration does, they play around with words, get real sneaky. So the free roam, they don't give you the context that it's unclassified areas where there's free roam. And then the free roam is not just free roam, it's free roam with badges, right? And even with badges, I guarantee you there's guards, there's cameras. You're definitely being monitored, even in the free roam area. But you're not roaming around unclassified areas. Classified area. If there's a classified area, you need a badge to get in there, right? You can't go past a point that is classified because you need a badge, and your press badge is not going to give you access to a classified area. You would need to get authorized to go there. You need to get an escort, right? This is no different than any government building, right? You go to the police station, you can roam around the lobby freely. You don't need a badge or an escort, right? But if you want to go in classified areas, you need an escort. Someone has to let you in. Someone has to monitor you and be with you. They're not going to let you go behind those doors and just do whatever you want to do, right? You go to a city hall building, right? There's a main corridor and main lobby area. You can roam around freely. You don't need an escort there. But the area where the workers are, you can't go back there, right? Restricted access. DMV, same thing. You can't go behind the counter. That's restricted access. But you can roam around generally freely in the lobby area. That is no different than what the press has been doing for a long time. In fact, the press has been more restricted because they need badges, right? When you go to the DMV, you don't need a badge to roam around in the lobby. You don't need a badge to get into the DMV. You don't need a badge to get into City Hall. You don't need a badge to get into many government buildings. The badge comes in when you're trying to go into a classified area. But in the Pentagon, you need a badge just to go in the quote-unquote lobby area, right? And I shouldn't just say lobby area because there might be an area where it's public access, maybe like an immediate lobby. There's probably multiple levels of, not probably, I know there's multiple levels of security in the Pentagon. So there might be a lobby area where, as a public, you go in, probably go through security just for weapons and things like that. And you're fine to be there, but although it being the Pentagon, I'm pretty sure someone's going to come to you and ask you, like, what are you doing? Why are you here? Blah, blah, blah. I doubt you can just come in there and just, like, hang out. There might be legalities where you actually are legally allowed to be there, but I'm pretty sure someone's going to be like, what the hell are you doing here? And then the press would have a higher level of access, so they might be able to go beyond on a tiny lobby area to some main corridors or hallways in unclassified areas, right, where they wouldn't need to be escorted, but they need a badge to get in there, right? And they would need to be able to present their badge at any point in time. And I'm sure there's rules they have to follow. They could be escorted out if they violate those rules, right? But in terms of the security risk that these guys are talking about, those areas are controlled, right? You're not sneaking in behind someone in the Pentagon. You're not going in there with a press badge. Nobody cares that you're with the press when it comes to classified areas. Nobody cares. Oh, I'm with CNN. They're not letting you in, man. You're just not. You could be the head of CNN, CNN CEO, the biggest anchor. It doesn't matter who you are. You could even be military. I could go as a military person, right, if I was active duty, in uniform, with my ID and everything, and I'm not getting access to the classified areas. The press is not getting access to the classified areas. So the whole argument about this is stupid having the press roaming around freely all over the Pentagon, it's a manipulation tactic, They're pretending like them roaming around an unclassified area is them roaming around the entire building, which would be crazy. And it would be a valid question to say, why was this allowed previous to this? But you should also be asking, why did Trump allow that, right? Of course, they're not going to go that deep. But this whole argument is based on nonsense, and the left did a horrible job of addressing it. Understandably, they apparently don't know how things go in the Pentagon, and that's fine. But then don't try to just argue to argue. If you don't know how things work there, then concede, or at least don't try to make a weak argument. Visit the Baby channel in the Baby comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.